Hi and welcome back to 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗀. Today, guys, we're going to be jumping back down into the charts for Bitcoin to see what's been going on most recently and what I think is likely to happen next. As I get into this video, if you do find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗀. If you haven't yet joined us down in Discord, links in the description down below. Fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free to join. I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find, so why not go ahead and check it out. Right, let's jump right down into this. Right, so this is Bitcoin paired up with USDT, and this is the hourly chart, and Binance is the data source. We're going to be talk about the recent kind of moves that have been going on here with Bitcoin, right? So I see this as a big A wave coming down, but inside here there are of course lots of movements, and we need to understand what these are so we can understand what is likely to happen next. Okay, so up on this side here we basically have a 335 structure, so very corrective. So it's not an impulsive structure or anything like that that's going on here, but there are 5 waves when you actually start to measure this out. So for example, if I were to take this measurement from the top of our 5th wave here, or this C wave on the larger scale, and then we were to go ahead and transpose it over to the high that we had over this side, we can see that we quite easily push through the 1.618, and we actually come down quite far. This does make it a 5-wave move, a 5-wave structure, right? So essentially what we have here is a wave 1, a wave 2, this being a wave 3, this is a wave 4, and we're looking for that 5th wave lower. Okay, so that's what you kind of have here inside your A wave. So the A wave potentially hasn't finished yet. Okay, but when we actually dissect these, right, it's not an impulsive structure because it doesn't have the right kind of subwave counts that you would expect of a 5-wave move. And whereas we take a look at what is going on over this side, we have these 5-wave structures going on inside a 5-wave structure going up, right? So essentially what we have here are the right kind of movements that you would expect to see inside your your structure. Basically a 5 3 5 coming up. Actually I did that slightly in the correct area. It would be 5 3 5 3 5, right? So we have a 5 3 5 3 5 right there. Now on this side, on the other hand, actually before I do that, I'll just show you what I mean. 1 2 3 4 coming here, then 5 going up there, right? Something to that effect. Now this side, what do we have? Well, we have a 3 3 5, so we don't have the 5 3 5 3 5 structure. Basically it's a 3 3, and then we have 5 waves dropping us down. Then we end up with a 3 wave up, which is fine. We would expect that, and then we start to see a more choppy but yet still 5-wave structure at the end. So essentially what you really have is a 3 3 5 on a larger scale. And this could actually mark the point of reversal, and this actually could be a whole different subset of movements going on here that might actually then lead this into like a 3 or a 3, so some kind of effect like that, right? A little bit more complicated than maybe just a standard ABC move. So obviously for invalidation of this, we need to move the price of Bitcoin up higher than 44,200, right? That's basically the low point here of this wave 1. So if we go higher than $44,200, then it would invalidate the 5-wave structure that we're seeing down here, and it would actually make this a 335 structure all in here, right? And that would be a very corrective pattern and something that you would expect to see. That being said, though, I was always expecting this B wave bounce, right? And we haven't really seen anything of significance. I mean, we've seen the 4th wave right now, which took us up to about $41,500, but it's not really enough to really be calling it a B wave bounce. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just zoom in a little bit here, and we'll talk about this 5-wave structure and what might happen if this was to be completed. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the typical retracement zones for a wave 5, right? So when wave 4 completes, how low does a wave 5 go? When it normally comes down, let's say normally, it's only typically, it typically comes down to a 1.236 to a 1.618 of the 4th wave, right? So for Bitcoin, this basically, let me grab hold of my price notes here. So for Bitcoin, we've got a low possibility of about 37,800. This comes in line pretty much with my thinking of about $37,500, and then we've got the higher end at about 38,600. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm thinking. Now it's possible that we do come down a little bit lower, and there's an alternative way of measuring this. So I'm just going to quickly remove that fib off there so we're neaten this up a little bit. What we'll do is we measure the entirety of the wave 3 and all the way up to the top of our wave 1. Okay, we then move this over to the top of our wave 4, and we look for the 0.618. Okay, and the 0.618 basically comes in line with that trend line. So I'll grab hold of this. Depending on the timeline where we get here, it actually might just drop down a little bit below it. But we're talking about $36,500, right? So there's an alternative way of measuring the fifth wave there. Okay, so those are the two things that we should be potentially looking out for the fifth wave, right? We know that invalidation of this would come in at about 44,200. Okay, go higher than that, and there is no fifth wave, at least not within that particular wave count. And if we do see this fifth wave come down, we're talking about anywhere between $37,500 and $38,500, right? Those are the typical areas. There is also the ability to remeasure that slightly differently if it's an overextension, that we might come down to around that 36,500. Now, this is important because even if this does complete, we'll always see some kind of bounce to the upside. So let's hypothetically say that we're going to go down to the 1.618, that 37,800. From here, we would actually see an ABC move upwards, okay? And it should be on a relatively big scale because this 5-wave move is on a big scale. So we'd be looking at some kind of bounce upwards that should still take us up towards that $42,000 to $45,000 in my opinion, before we even have the ability to go back down into a deeper C wave, which is again something that we could potentially see. Now, the other thing that we have to bear in mind with all of this structure and all of these waves are the additional corrective patterns that might be playing out on a larger scale. Now, for this, we would have to acknowledge that there are 5 waves down here. So we'll assume that we have had those low points of the fifth wave coming in, and that's a 5-wave structure. We then obviously have the ABC bounce to the upside. That's a 3-wave structure. And then we should expect an additional 5-wave structure, as in the C wave coming down lower. Okay, now if that is the case, we would pretty much take a look at this entire 535 as a big ABC, right? Which is kind of what I've drawn here. Big A wave down, B wave bounce, which I'll just put up to this resistance line here for about $43,500. And then we'd have a C wave taking us down lower, okay? That would be our entire structure, right? It would, of course, invalidate the trend line that had been running from the 32,000 low, the $34,000 low, and so forth. The minimum requirements for a C wave would be, of course, the A wave minimum. So it basically have to come down to the A wave as a bare minimum of the requirement. Of course, you know, it's more than likely going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So if we were to measure the entire distance of the 37,800 to the top of our fifth wave here, or the beginning of our A wave in total, and we were to move this over to, let's say, that theoretical $43,000 range, then our most probable area is to go down to $34,000, okay? So again, you know, these are the things that we'd be looking at. Now, there's no reason, you know, for this to necessarily turn into anything more than an ABC, okay? And the reason for this is when we start taking a look at the stochastic RSIs. Now, on the hourly chart, we need to see a bit of a correction. This leads us into our fifth wave. But when we start going up into the larger time frames, such as the daily chart, the momentum indicator is actually telling us there isn't exactly enough momentum to actually see this correction drop down significantly further. We've pretty much oversold here. We've come up a little bit and tracking at about 18.8 on the fast line and 15.5 on the slow line. Essentially, you know, we're still oversold. So we should be thinking about moving this up, right? And that will be the bounce. But I do think we're likely to bring this back down a little bit before we see this B wave up, and then, of course, bring down a little bit lower. Now, the weekly chart, it does need to see the correction. And again, we are already out of the overbought area here for Bitcoin. So when we start thinking about this on a bigger structure, we are talking about bringing this down right back into this little yellow box that I had already marked out. And again, this starts from that higher range, right, of about 37,700, right? That's the typical area that I've always been thinking about in terms of this retracement. What I don't want to necessarily see is a new lower low getting set here. What I want to see is another higher low, because I do think that is what's going to set us apart from, you know, from some of the bears that are out there, right? So the current low point that we want to be higher than is 34,322. And I do think we have a strong probability that we are going to close above that here on the weekly chart when we have this correction complete. That will basically set us with 3 higher low areas, okay? Likewise, we are also setting up these higher highs every single time. So on this weekly chart, it is obvious that we need a correction. The correction has to come down. It have to come down into a pretty sweet spot. But before that can happen, we have to first of all push back up to allow our stochastic RSI on our hourly chart to basically move out of this oversold area. It doesn't have to be massive. I would like to see over $45,000 because that would put our C wave at a more manageable area, because I do think we're going to have a nice pullback that's going to wipe the momentum out, but I do want to see it around the 34.5, maybe $35,000, just set another higher low, and I think that's going to set us up nicely for the next big move to the upside for BTC. What I'm not seeing anywhere in this data is anything that's really indicating to me that we have enough momentum behind the price to see Bitcoin pull down into the low 20s. I just cannot see it, unfortunately. I mean, we've been setting the higher lows, we've been setting the higher highs, and essentially the momentum indicator is actually correcting reasonably well under the circumstances that we've seen so far. There isn't necessarily enough momentum to see the price of Bitcoin pull down into those low ranges. And as I spoke about the other day, $20,000 to $25,000 Bitcoin essentially is bear market. And once you kind of hit that level, you're talking about being down there for a significant period of time before we go up into a new bull run and new all-time highs. It wouldn't be a bounce down there or a wick down there, then a move up. That just is illogical to me. Obviously, we've also seen some other conflicting information. We've seen over 2.3 million Bitcoin leave exchanges more than has gone on. So all the inflows, all the outflows. We've seen over 10% of the entire Bitcoin supply leave exchanges. There's a shortage on the exchanges right now, which is a huge shock to the supply. And as soon as demand kicks in, you're going to see the price of Bitcoin absolutely rocket on very little investment required. So we are going to see some really interesting things happen. We're not seeing what is required to, we're not seeing the inflows required to see Bitcoin pull back significantly, right? We need to have a surplus of supply. We need to see dwindling demand and etc. I do think the price is going to pull back down, but I don't think we're going to be dropping down into those significantly low numbers that a lot of the bears are thinking about. Ultimately, though, I do see Bitcoin coming down, and I do see us moving on up nicely afterwards. So guys, I'm going to leave the video there. If you have found this video useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.